Hey, welcome to The Feast Life, where we empower you, the modern homeschool mom, to create a life and homeschool you love. I'm Julie Ross, the creator of the award-winning curriculum A Gentle Feast, a homeschool veteran of over 20 years, and a certified Christian life coach. Charlotte Mason said, life should be all living, not a mere tedious passing of time. So on this show, we seek to savor the feast of life. So go get your favorite beverage and pull up a chair. You're welcome at this table. Hey, welcome to The Feast Life. I'm your host, Julie Ross. Today I'm going to be sharing a clip of a recent talk I did all about how we need to think about education differently. Are you unknowingly trying to mold your homeschool to a system that was never meant to honor your child's individuality? It's time to break free from the pressure, fear, and factory-style mindset that might be holding you back. It's time to embrace a radical, life-giving approach to learning that respects both you and your children as persons. Let's dive in. I'm Julie Ross. I'm the creator of A Gentle Feast. I was a former public school teacher. I started a private Christian school. I started a homeschool hybrid academy, and I've been homeschooling my own 5 kiddos for 20 years. So I've been in education for 30 years now, which makes me sound really old. But I've been in lots of different educational settings too, and I think that gives me a really unique perspective of how kids learn in different environments. And my oldest graduated from college. She now works for Gentle Feast. She does our graphic design. And then my second daughter will graduate in May. She's studying neuroscience. And then I have a 16, 15, 14-year-old that I'm still homeschooling. So in the trenches of homeschooling high school years is really fun. So you are in the right place if you're new to homeschooling and you are like, I don't know what's going on. I'm really overwhelmed and I don't even know where to begin. So hopefully this will give you some clarity during our time together. If you're new to this Charlotte Mason approach, and I'll tell you who that is if you don't know who that is in a second, but you want to learn how to transform your homeschooling. So just in case there's anybody on this call who does not know who Charlotte Mason is, I'm going to quote her all the time. So I feel like I just need to get the little spiel about Charlotte Mason, the little elevator pitch. Okay. So she lived in Victorian times, the late 1800s to the early 1900s, and she was an educational philosopher. She started a school in Ambleside to teach governesses to go into people's homes. She's actually the only educational philosophy built around the idea that home is the best place for children to learn, which I think really distinguishes her from some of the other educational theories out there. She established the Parents National Education Union that sent out programs, not just throughout England, but throughout the whole British Empire. I could go on and on about her, but I'm not, because we got to get going. But if you have more questions about her and her approach or what she did, amazing woman. I actually just interviewed Leah Bowden on my podcast. The episode hasn't aired yet, but she's wrote a children's book about Charlotte Mason, like a chapter book for early kids, which is going to be fantastic. Because my kids are always like, who is this lady that's on all of our stuff? So anyway, amazing woman, did so much for so many children in education. And so you're going to hear me quote her a lot. Okay. So when we're going down to what really matters here, what is the purpose of education? Because we could talk about curriculum, we could talk about co-ops, we could talk about all these activities and all these different things. But what really comes down to is, why are we doing this? That is the heart of your homeschool. Why? What do you actually believe about education? Because out of that will inform the actions and the approach and the things that you are doing, hopefully. So there are several different approaches, but what I'm going to talk today about is comparing our modern school system and then a Charlotte Mason more gentle approach. So in the early 1900s, Woodrow Wilson, this was before he was president, gave an address to the High School Teachers Association of New York. And this is what he said. He said, let us go back and distinguish between the two things that we want to do. For we want to do two things in modern society. We want one class of persons to have a liberal education. And by this, he means like the liberal arts. And we want another class of persons, a much larger class of necessity in every society, to forego the privileges of a liberal education and fit themselves to perform specific, difficult manual tasks. You cannot train them for both in the time that you have at your disposal. They must make a selection. And you, he's talking to the high school teachers, you must make a selection. But what I might intent upon is that we should not confuse ourselves with regard to what we are trying to make of the pupils under our instruction. We are either trying to make liberally educated persons out of them, or we are trying to make skillful servants of society along mechanical lines, or else we do not know what we are trying to do. So he's basically saying a very small percentage of our population should be given this wide feast, I like to call it, of learning, where they're learning lots of different subjects, the humanities, you think of the liberal arts education. And then the other class, all we should be training them to do are these manual skills. And then he's saying the teachers, you're the ones who are making this choice. You get to decide. We are making things out of our pupils. So it's this educational philosophy of children like being lumps of clay. Horace Mann, the founder of our modern public education system, he said children were like wax. They're things that we as teachers get to mold, not the parents. And that there's this distinction here. And I love that Charlotte Mason, the way she contradicts that, and I'll read her quote in a second. But we're now seeing the results of this kind of educational philosophy, this industrialized view of education that's been going on since the 1850s in our country. And I know I probably don't need to tell you all these statistics because like you homeschool and you're like, yeah, Julie, this is why I'm homeschooling. But it's so important because I think as homeschool moms, we often have this pressure that we put on ourselves because we're trying to compete with a system that's failing. And we see kids that are going, my kids don't know how to do that, or my kids not doing that yet. Or people are asking, like, why are you homeschooling? What do your kids actually do all day? And we can put all this pressure on ourselves to try to fit into a system that's actually broken. It's not working. And there's some statistics, you can read them, to prove that, okay, this isn't working for people. Why do we feel the need and pressure to conform our homeschool to that? And even though I had left this kind of system when I stopped teaching public school, in the private school that I was in was very similar. Again, that kind of industrialized system of education, it still subtly affected my homeschool, even when I was using Charlotte Mason, because I would feel this pressure that my children had to do this and they had to do this on this timetable. And this is the only way to know that they're learning these things. And I have to test them and I have to ask them questions. And they have to get the right answer. And I was putting all this pressure on ourselves, trying to use living books and go out in nature and do these other beautiful things. And it wasn't until I realized like how ingrained this mindset was in me from all my years of being in education, being a student myself, and had to unlearn this for myself. This is what radically changed my homeschool, was me being able to step out of this kind of thinking and putting this kind of pressure on me and my children on a regular basis. So Charlotte Mason, her view, and contradictory to the Woodrow Wilson quote I read, she said, but the people themselves begin to understand and clamor for an education which shall qualify their children for life rather than for earning a living. As a matter of fact, it is the man who has read and thought on many subjects who is, with the necessary training, the most capable, whether in handling tools, drawing plans, or keeping books. The more of a person we succeed in making a child, the better will he both fulfill his own life and serve society. So they're both talking about like the common good, right? The educational approach that we do want our children to be good citizens. We do want them to contribute to society, right? But she's saying we can't just say, okay, they only need to learn these skills and these people can have this enriching humanistic kind of education, not humanistic, humanities style of education. And then these people, they just need to learn some skills. He's saying it's in learning these things, in reading these beautiful books, that actually our children, no matter what they do, are going to be better humans. So I think that is such a key distinction here. And we want to look at how we're approaching our children, what we are giving them in order to make them more of a person. So what is the purpose of education? Only you can answer that for yourself, right? And you might not agree with this, and that's totally fine. But just knowing what you actually think and believe is so key because that's going to influence everything else. So Charlotte Mason says that the sole end of education is that we are growing a whole person that can think for themselves. Morally, spiritually, physically, intellectually. We're not just taking them and we're trying to fill an empty bucket with information in order to grow their intellect. We are shaping, nurturing, caring for a complete person. And we want them to learn to think for themselves. And we want to grow them holistically, physically, mentally, all the things is what makes a person. And this is such a beautiful way to view children. And we're going to keep going with this concept. And it's so key that we see this because this will, again, it's the heart. It's what's going to shape everything that you do in your homeschool. So I want you to reflect on this question if you have space to journal it, or you can just think about it. But how is our modern educational system influencing your homeschool? And it might not. But I know for me, I realized I was putting so much pressure on myself and so much pressure then on my kids, even if I wasn't saying it, the way that I was acting and the anxiety that I was bringing to our school was still so influenced by this. You know what's really interesting though? When I really dived into this and I really dived into Charlotte Mason and started kind of letting go of that thinking and embracing how she viewed children and her view of education, what happened? This popped in my head. So I used to have a reoccurring nightmare that I got to a final exam in college and I didn't know what was on the test, or I had never taken the class before. And I would have that dream on a weekly basis. And when I started doing this and healing it, I haven't had those dreams in probably 10 years. And I don't know why this just popped in my head, but it shows you like the amount of stress my body was still holding from being a student in the system. And I'm one of those kids, like, I liked school. I did really well in school, but the amount of stress and pressure I carried for 20 years of school and then I still had as an adult in my homeschool was huge. So it's really something to consider and think about. I don't know why that just popped in my head, but I'm glad I don't have those dreams anymore because, man, they were stressful. But in the book, Free to Learn by Peter Gray, he puts it this way. A result of all this is that parents worry about their children's ability to make a living more than they did in times in past. And this contributes to their increased tendency to view childhood as a time of resume building rather than a time of play. Somehow parents believe if they can get their children into the right adult-directed extracurricular or volunteer activities, get them to achieve high scores on tests, and get them into the most prestigious schools, they can protect their children's future. They are wrong, of course, but this perception still persists. The reality is that the best protection against unemployment in uncertain times is having precisely those qualities people develop through self-directed learning. Uncertain times require personal responsibility, independence of thought, self-initiative, self-assertion, flexibility, creativity, imagination, and the willingness to take risks. And we all know that a systematized view of education doesn't do that. It doesn't allow that independent thinking. Did you ever question your teachers? I mean, you might have, but you probably got in trouble, right? Or didn't get a good grade on the test. It's not about the actual experience of education. It's about the end and achieving some sort of result. All right, so I saw this the other day. I thought this was fascinating if you guys are Lego people. So in the 1950s and 60s, when Legos came out, they had universal building kits where basically you got a bunch of pieces and you got a bunch of pictures of things you could possibly make with those Legos. The whole point was to encourage child-led creativity, independent thinking. So you see like this girl, I don't know what that is, but it looks pretty cool, right? And the ad is saying, this is what, we don't know what this is, but it's beautiful. It's something the child made. She looks really cute and happy. She loves it. It's cute, right? It was a total flop. Lego almost went bankrupt as a company. It was in the 80s that they changed their model and they went from making universal kits that allowed for like creative play and expression to making what you all probably know if you have kids that use Legos, where you get a kit and it gives you an instruction book and you only get the pieces to make this one thing. And if you did it right, ba-bam, right? Out comes the little thing that the instructions told you to make. When Lego switched their model to making these kits, as opposed to these open-ended kits like in the picture, the business exploded. Okay, and now it's the billion whatever dollar industry that it is today. Okay. Why? Why was this a flop? And why was this successful? If you think about human nature, we like certainty. We like to know if I follow these steps in this exact order, I'm going to get this beautiful little perfect thing. So my son, when I went to England, I got him this little thing and he made this little bus. Now you might have kids that have random Legos and they're young still and they're still playing with them. But when they get to be about teenagers, and I love these, the things that you can make with Legos are like so cool, right? I'm not saying anything against Legos. I'm just saying it shows human nature that the free creativity, the open-ended instructions, we don't really know what to do with those. We want certainty that I can follow this, and if I do this, I will get this result. And that's what our educational system is built upon, right? We do these things, and in so many years, you should have X result. Problem is, our children aren't products, they're people. And people don't follow this linear path always. And learning is messy and creative and playful. And sometimes there's not just one result that we're trying to get here. And so it's a very, when I saw this, I was like, oh my gosh, this so ties in to this view of education, right? And allowing that kind of Lego creation there, that sometimes things don't go the way that we want and we don't know what's going on. And sometimes our kids can take 3 months in a day and then they stall out for a little bit for a year and you're like, oh my goodness, what's happening? And then all of a sudden they shoot again. It's like my kids, their whole schooling was like this. It was never this straight linear path and follow all the things. And then you have succeeded. In this book, Feel Bad Education, which shows you what he thinks about our school system, Alfie Kahn says, we know now that people aren't machines, such that an input, listening to a lecture, reading a textbook, filling out a worksheet, will reliably yield an output learning. What matters is how people experience what they do, what meaning they ascribe to it, and what their attitudes and goals are. Thus, if a student finds an academic task stressful, they're far less likely to understand or even remember. And studies have shown this, like kids that have been conditioned to only get a result, only do this, and they can only have the right thing, they don't try. They're not willing to take risks in school. They're not willing to take risks and try things because they're so afraid to fail. There's like, oh no, there's only one right answer. I can't try that. I can only pick things that are easy to do, easy to learn. I'll only try those things because then I know I can be successful. And it's all about the success, the result, rather than the process. Another quote is from this book, Out of Our Minds by Sir Kenneth Robinson. He has like a viral TED Talk called Do Schools Kill Creativity? I can put it in the Facebook group, but I'll save you the 22 minutes. The answer is yes. But in the book, he says, talking about this kind of creative process, which is what this whole book is about, he said Thomas Edison famously ran through dozens of ideas and designs for the light bulb before settling on the final version. Terence Tao, who at age 31 received the Fields Medal for Mathematics, which is like the mathematical equivalent of the Nobel Prize, he says that discovery in mathematics is always about trial and error. He says discovery in mathematics is always about trial and error. You come up with the wrong idea, you work on it for a month and realize it doesn't work, and then you come up with the next wrong idea. And then finally, by process of elimination, you come up with something does work. I asked Sir Harry Croto how many of his experiments failed. He said about 95% of them. Of course, failure is not the right word. He said, you're just finding out what doesn't work. Albert Einstein put the point sharply. Anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new. But our modern educational system doesn't allow for mistakes, right? You take a test, you get things wrong, you get the grade back, you move on. You don't go, oh, okay, why didn't I get that right? What is the right answer? Like you never actually find out, like, oh, what was I supposed to know? You don't get the process of learning and growing. And so what we as parents, unintentionally, because this is what I did for years, I put that pressure on my kids. You got to get it right. That narration needs to look like a high school written essay. Even though you're 8, you only wrote a few words. What is this? Or you don't know how to do that math problem already? Come on, you should already know these multiplication facts by now. The kids down the street know the measure. I was always doing that again from the mindset of this is the result, not the process. And learning is messy. And if we don't want to kill our kids' creativity and kill their willingness to be able to take risks, to try things, we have to let them learn, fail. What did you learn from that? Okay, let's keep going and allow them to make some mistakes and grow and learn and support them from that, not be afraid of them. But if we're afraid of them ourselves, we're going to put that atmosphere on our kids as well. All right, so can you relate to any of these? These are things I used to tell myself. We are so far behind. I don't know what I'm doing. Homeschooling shouldn't be this hard. I'm going to mess up my child. I'm so overwhelmed. This child is so difficult. These were things I actually didn't even realize that I was saying to myself on a regular basis. No wonder I was so stressed out and anxious all the time. Because if I believe that we are so far behind, right? How am I going to show up? Am I going to show up from a place of calm, from confidence, from love, from support, joy? No, I'm going to show up like, oh my goodness, why are you taking so long to finish that one problem? We should be on chapter blah, blah, blah. And now you like only took 10 minutes to do problem one. Always this anxious controlling. And what I realized is that wasn't giving me the gentle homeschool that I wanted. The thoughts that I was constantly telling myself, the stress and anxiety that I was carrying was being passed on to my kids. Even if we don't say this stuff that's going on in our heads, even if we don't even know sometimes what's going on in our heads, our kids can feel that stress and anxiety. And when studies have shown this, when children feel, that was in one of the quotes I just read, when children feel stressed and anxious, they don't learn as well. Think about it. When you're like in a super stressful situation and you're trying to get all the kids out the door and you can't find your keys, and you're like, oh my gosh, where are the keys? Where are the keys? They're like, the keys can be right in front of you, but your brain is so stressed out, you can't actually see it. And so if what we're thinking is causing us to feel so much stress and anxiety, and we're going to talk about this more throughout this week, especially tomorrow when we talk about the helper in a homeschool, that is going to affect the way that you're showing up on a regular basis in your homeschool. And so we need, again, to see, is this mindset affecting the way that I'm viewing my homeschool? Charlotte Mason puts it this way: let not the nervous, anxious, worried mother think this easy, happy relation with her children is for her. She may be the best mother in the world, but the thing that her children will get from her in these moods is a touch of her nervousness, most catching of complaints. She will find them fractious, rebellious, unmanageable, and will be slow to realize that it is her fault. Not the fault of her act, but the fault of her state, meaning her thinking. So not the fault of what she's doing, but what she is thinking. That anxiety, that need to try to control everything, that fear comes out in our homeschool. I heard someone say something last week that I was like, oh, that's so good. When we are scared, we act scary. And there were many years where I would never admit that I was actually scared. But I was scared that I was like messing up my kids. I was scared that they weren't where I thought they were supposed to be because somebody said they were supposed to be there. Like I was scared that we were behind what? I'm not really sure, but like all of that thinking was so ingrained, and that fear was making me show up in ways that I didn't want to for my kids. So I have learned to replace some of those thoughts. This is one I say all the time. We are learning and growing every day, which is true, right? All of us are. Does it mean that it's going to follow again this nice little timeline and this nice little process and we're going to have this little Lego kit thing built? No. Learning and growing, again, it's messy. It's not linear. It goes in spurts. But I know that we're making progress every day. When I tell myself that, I'm like, oh, okay, we're growing, we're learning, we're doing this every day. And my child is progressing at the perfect pace. Seeing them as a person on their own journey has been so freeing for me. I don't need to control and manipulate and do all the things and put all this pressure on myself constantly to form that little mold of clay or form that little ball of wax. And I'm going to keep talking in the next couple of days. Okay, like what is my role then? That's all I know to do. Don't worry, we're going to get there, okay? But when I tell myself that, I can breathe. And it's a hard thing to learn because I have a child who has a lot of learning struggles. And there was so much fear that what's going to happen to them? Am I doing the right thing for them? How can I help them? Oh my goodness, they should be able to read and do this by now. They should know their multiplication. Like I was always putting so much stress and pressure. and it wasn't helping our relationship. And when I learned to step back and just look at this child and love this child for the journey that they're on, for the growth and the way that it happened, and I learned that I could step back and I can trust, like our relationship is so beautiful now. And I'm so grateful that I took the pressure off of both of us, really. And the other day, okay, here's my little tip for you. If you have boys, ask them to talk to you about school, do their narrations and those kind of things when they're moving. It's something about the boy's brain when they're in movement, like stuff just comes out. So it's like, hey, you want to go for a walk? Sure. And I was like, hey, tell me about that book you've been reading. And the book, something in the book reminded him about this anime show that reminded him about this other. The kid talked for 45 minutes. It wasn't pressure like, okay, now it's time to sit down and then here's your pen and you need to write about this book and we need to talk about it and I need to check and make sure that you actually learned all the things that were important in that book and that I think are important. No, it was just like, hey, dude, let's go for a walk and you can talk to me about this book. And it was literally, I didn't say one word for 45 minutes. The amount of deep thinking and connections in that book about creativity, like being able to like express your thoughts, express your creativity, make deep connections, think for yourself. That's what I want for my kids. But I had to let go of that pressure. And now I can see that. And just a couple weeks ago, this child's taking a coding class, and the teacher came out to me and she was like, I need to tell you something. I'm like, oh gosh. And she's, I've never seen a child as good at coding as your child is. Have they ever done this before? And I'm like, no. She's like, literally, I'm giving the instructions on what they're supposed to be doing and the steps that they have to follow. And by the time I get to the last step, your child has already coded the whole thing and then done a couple extra things and then just goes around the room the rest of the class now apparently and helps all the other kids figure it out by the time the class is over. Like he's able to do something in like 5 minutes. It takes everybody like 60 minutes to do. And I, like when she told me that, I just lost it because I was like, I spent so many years so stressed out about this child and the way that their brain works. And I'm like, of course, his brain can do this stuff that nobody else's can do. Of course, because it couldn't do these things that I thought were supposed to happen on these timelines. And all of our kids are like that. And I have five, and they're all the one thing that one kid could do, the other kid can't. And if you have siblings, I'm not siblings. If you have multiple age children and you are, oh, your sister could do that. Even if you don't ever say it, if you think it in your head, right? That can suddenly come out and affect the atmosphere in your home. Trust the process. Your child is growing and learning at their own perfect pace in their own perfect way. I love this from Charlotte Mason. She says, education, like faith, is evidence of things not seen. With this approach, I can't be like, okay, here's your workbook questions for today. Okay, you got 9 out of 10. I know you understand this and you've learned a lot today. That's not there. I can see some fruit, right? I see evidence of the things that they're doing and the way that they're growing, but sometimes it's years later that something comes out. They're like, oh, remember that lesson that we did 4 years ago? And I'm like, what? Okay, yeah, I remember that. But it's in there. And sometimes we have to have the faith and trust the process. In a general homeschool, the key is to honor the child and provide them the nourishment that their brains actually need. And we'll talk about that, what that is in the next couple of days. So Charlotte Mason said, our crying need today is less for a better method of education than for an adequate conception of children. How are we viewing childhood? In the book, Dumbing Us Down, John Taylor Gatto, he was like the New York State Teacher of the Year several years in a row. His writing is incredible. Oh, I bookmarked the wrong page. Hold on 1 second. I love how he closes this book. And I'm going to read it to you because it's like, I can stand on my soapbox and say this all day long, okay? Once you understand the logic behind modern schooling, its tricks and traps are fairly easy to avoid. Schools train children to be employees and consumers. Teach your own to be leaders and adventurers. School trains children to obey reflexively. Teach your own to think critically and independently. Good kids have a low threshold for boredom. Help your own to develop an inner life so that they'll never be bored. Urge them to take on the serious material, the grown-up material. And this is how Charlotte Mason viewed children as well. We don't need to water things down for them. In history, literature, philosophy, music, art, economics, theology, all the stuff school teachers know well enough to avoid. Challenge your kids with plenty of solitude so that they can learn to enjoy their own company, to conduct inner dialogues. School people are conditioned to dread being alone. They seek constant companionship through the TV, the computer, the phone, and through shallow friendships quickly acquired and quickly abandoned. Your children should have a more important life, and they can. First, though, wake up to what our schools really are: laboratories of experimentation on young minds, drill centers for the habits and attitudes that corporate society demands. Mandatory education serves children incidentally. Its real purpose is to turn them into servants. Don't let your own half their childhood extended, not even for a day. If David Farragut could command and capture a British warship as a preteen, if Ben Franklin could apprentice himself to a printer at the same age, then put himself through a course of study that would choke a Yale senior today, there's no telling what your kids can do. After a long and 30 years in the public school trenches, I've concluded that genius is as common as dirt. We suppress genius because we haven't yet figured out how to manage a population of educated men and women. Our children are capable of so much. We need to have a more adequate view of childhood. So, what does that mean, an adequate view of childhood? Our children are full of potential. Charlotte Mason says they have infinite potential. There are not just empty buckets waiting for us to pour information into. They're more like acorns with a whole oak tree inside of them. And it's our job to nourish and care and support that growth. They need real books and big ideas. This are what children, they can handle meaty things. Again, we don't need to water things down or have children versions of things to give to them. Their minds are capable of way more than we give them credit for. They learn on a nonlinear path, like what I've talked about. It's not input in, output out. They're not machines. They deserve unstructured time, like he was talking about in that quote. Our children need time for solitude, need time for these ideas and these thoughts to take root. If they're overscheduled and their days are constantly full of activity or they're constantly on a device, they don't have any time to think about their own thinking. Children grow on ideas, not information. And last but not least, children are worth being heard. This is one of the things I love about this approach so much, because if, your schooling was anything like mine, we'd read a textbook and then we'd answer some questions about what we had read. And you'd get a grade, like you got 8 out of 10 right, okay? Nobody ever asked me what I thought about it. Nobody ever listened to the questions I had about the material. Or oh, we were learning about that today, and that reminded me about blah, 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 blah. Nobody ever listened to that. Maybe your schooling was different than mine, but there wasn't any time for that. The teacher was just talking and we were taking notes and taking tests on it. And this is one of the things I love about this view of children so much, because it honors them as persons and we listen to them and what they have to tell us about what it is that they're learning about. Like me walking with my son, like they know and that they're heard and that they're loved, and that is such a beautiful gift that we get to give our children. So the heart of a gentle homeschool is this concept: the foundation principle, Charlotte Mason's first principle. Children are born persons. She says this is a revolutionary idea. For what is a revolution but a complete reversal of attitude? And this is in the early 1900s. I can't even imagine what you would think in 2025, right? We need to start here. This is this revolutionary concept that children are born persons. The thing that used to rob my joy in my homeschool was all the worry and fear and anxiety and overthinking that I was doing on a regular basis. Because when we are trapped in our fears, in our doubts, in our worries, we're not present. We are trapped in the future worrying about things that haven't even happened yet. Okay, if you want to find joy in your homeschool, if you want to respect your children as persons, you need to actually be present in the moment. But I couldn't turn off all the thinking that was happening here. And so these little habits, They seem small, and some of them might be like, that's just silly. Going for a walk and not listening to music or a podcast and just noticing the trees, noticing that flower. Oh, that tree didn't bloom like that last week. Oh, look, there's that bird. I hadn't seen that bird in a while. Wonder where it's been. Like, start to notice things. That helps you to be present. So when I would find my brain starting to start overthinking and worrying, I would bring it back and be like, I love that shirt that you're wearing today. Oh, look at that thing on the wall. Oh, let's light this candle. Like, I had to recenter myself and constantly bring myself back to the present. Don't let your fear and worry rob you of the joy of your children that are right before you now. As I can say, as a mom whose kids are getting a lot older, enjoy. And I know people tell you that, and you're like, yeah, you don't know. I haven't slept in a week. But don't let fear and worry rob you of the joy of right now. Charlotte Mason says this: we all remember the divine warning, see that ye despise not of these little ones. But the words convey little definite meaning to us. We must either reverence or despise children. And while we regard them as incomplete and undeveloped beings who will one day arrive at the completeness of a man, again, that like assembly line thinking, rather than weak and ignorant persons whose ignorance we must inform and whose weakness we must support, but whose potentialities are as great as our own. We cannot do otherwise than despise children, however kindly or even tenderly we commit the offense. She writes some powerful words, people. Like that mother's anxiety quote, and this one is, oh, okay. So she's not missing words. You're either reverencing children, you're respecting them as persons. That, yeah, children are ignorant. They don't know about the world, right? We're here to inform them of that, to nourish that potential that's in them. We're here to support their weaknesses so that they grow stronger in those areas. But if we view children, so that's the one view, is they're a person, but they're weak, they're little, right? They need support, they need nourishment to grow. The other view is they're undeveloped, they're incomplete. Someday they'll arrive. If we keep doing all these things, maybe we'll get the result. She says that's despising children. She says we need to see that they have the same potential as we do. And here's the great news. We're growing too. So we could put all this pressure on ourselves of, I'm not where I want to be. I feel behind. I don't feel like I'm doing enough. I don't feel like I'm growing. The same thoughts I had that I said earlier about our kids, we say those things about ourselves. And we don't realize that our journey is messy too. And we have to learn sometimes by mistakes, by failures, going, oh, that didn't work. Okay, how can I learn from that? What could I do different? We think, oh, I either do it all perfect or it's all a failure. And that's not real life. That's not what we should be offering for our children. And that's certainly not what we should be offering ourselves. We need to see that we have the same potential too, that we are still growing and we are still learning and we are not complete and we are on this journey together. And in school, I had to be the successful one and get the smelly sticker on all my tests, or I felt like I was a failure. So taking the things that we've talked about today and really coming down with what matters most to you. What do you believe is the purpose of education? Hey, thanks for listening to today's episode. Let's wrap up with some key takeaways. Number one, education isn't a product and our kids aren't projects. I've learned that children aren't empty buckets waiting to be filled or clay to be molded. Charlotte Mason's philosophy helped me see that children are whole persons with infinite potential. What a beautiful shift. Number two, the system sticks with us even after we leave it. I didn't realize how much my own schooling shaped my view of education. Even as a homeschool mom, I found myself slipping back into the mindset until I really began to question it. Number three, the school model wasn't designed for wholeness. When I read that Woodrow Wilson quote, it shook me. The system was built to produce workers, not thinkers. Charlotte Mason offers something radically different, a vision of education that values the whole child. Number four, pressure kills the joy and the growth. I saw this clearly with my own children, and when I let go of fear and allowed them to grow at their own pace, amazing things started to unfold. Releasing that pressure made space for real learning and connection. Number 5, I'm growing too. This homeschool journey isn't just about my kids. I've had to unlearn, relearn, and grow right alongside of them. Number 6, joy happens in the present. If we're constantly stuck in the what ifs or worried about the future, we don't see the beauty that's right in front of us. Being more present with your kids will bring more peace to your days. And last but not least, mindset is so key. When we have thoughts like, I'm so behind, or we're never going to learn this, or my child's so difficult, we can spiral into anxiety. We need to start believing that we're learning and growing every day. This will shift everything. I hope today's episode has brought you some more clarity and peace as you make decisions about what education truly is for you and your family. Thanks for listening.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this episode, please heart it down below and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. Leave a comment and let me know what you learned in today's episode. I'd love to hear from you.